It's the rival. Welcome to Out of Survival with Julia. I am Julia, and this is a safe space for us to speak about mental health. I know I come on all happy, and I try to make this environment very safe, in laughter and healing, having hope. But I also do want to speak about the things that we don't speak about, because I am so against the hush hush community that today's topic will be about not having the female role model that girls should have. So, if this is something that guys would love to watch, it's good to know, about women in your family. So you could always put it in that position, or you could just turn it around for you as a different parenting caretaker. Okay? So I don't want to leave nobody out. So, yeah, for me, I thought I had a mother figure, um, and I did. My grandmother was mine. Even though I rarely seen her, the things that I learned from her was like, you just you couldn't top it. One of the biggest lessons I've learned was giving back to the poor, giving back to the needy. And I was so young, you know. And those are the good things about having a good role model. Um, but in reality, because I didn't see her so much, I was, of course, with my mother. Um, she was a young mother, so I didn't put nothing, like I've said in all of my videos. I don't blame her for not knowing how to guide me the correct way, but I am all about asking for help now. Seeing that, breaking that generational curse or cycle. Um, for me, it felt like a curse, so I say curse. You know, there's a lot of things that go into not knowing um, how to do things in a feminine way. Most of my life, I loved wearing big T-shirts. I loved, um, just playing, football, basketball. I didn't have the one-on-one experience with a woman that I do see now, that I give to other kids. Um, it was just always what it felt like was, it always felt like, what can you do for me? Can you watch my kids? Can you do the dishes? Just because, and I take this back. I told y'all before, I wanted to do the dishes at a young age just to help out the family, and yeah, I wouldn't do that now, but you know, I was. It did feel like a Cinderella story, and I wouldn't put myself down that low if it wasn't true. I did just come up on this with, so much abuse to your mental. You do forget things, you forget that you ever had a big argument with your mother, that she picked sides, and it wasn't just one time. It wasn't just, it was in different aspects of my life had she turned her back on me. And it just developed as not knowing what a good relationship is from a female side. You see um, your mother get played, and just aspects of friends, let's just say that, right? You can't really pick out the right friends, obviously, in my story. If y'all want to go back and look at the other ones, and like, subscribe if you do. But I didn't pick the right friends, you know. They were still talking behind my back, you know, which now I look at my life now, I don't even deal with people that gossip. I'm out, you know, I am out the conversation. I don't want to be in it because it's such a low vibing thing to do, is to talk about someone when they're not there, or in general, just talking about someone, you know. The gossips there, I saw that my whole life, and I thought that was weird, you know. It wasn't my personality. And those are things that I feel like you build that personality based on your role model. And honestly, I thought that it was the best role model. Like, I could tell you in my 20s, like, I still had the best role model. I don't care what anyone says. And, you know, speaking in terms of my mother, because of course my grandmother passed, but, you know, when you're fending for yourself, you do look at, you know, what did my mom go through, or what did my role model go through, and you try to emulate that the best you can, because you see that, you know, they kind of made it, you know, I'm alive, you know. So you kind of take it as what it is, and you develop a pattern of unhealthy relationships with people, whether it be friendships or relationships, you know. um, in the midst of all that, of her trying to find me a father figure, is what I thought, you know. I've seen the bad relationships. I've seen what I didn't want at, you know, if my brothers are like 11 years apart from me. So I was maybe 9, you know, knowing that I didn't want to live like that, that I could fend for myself, and that I wasn't going to let any man push me around, or, you know, it's things that you don't want, right? But when you grow up, you forget those things. You forget that you told yourself you weren't going to do that to your kids, but you don't have kids, right? That's my story. And you start, you know, forgetting that, and going back to the patterns, and, oh, wait, she needs help with her kids, you know? And you raise those kids, and those kids forget about you. But, you know, and that takes a toll on your mental health as well, because you put your whole life out for these people, and they didn't teach you nothing. You know, as much as I wanted to say they taught me a lot, I read a lot. You know, I love books. You know, she hated that I loved books. So I did feel like the Belle too. Like the Cinderella and the Belle, it's just like I didn't fit in, you know, and she knew that. I feel like there's not one person in my family that could say I'm lying, you know, other than the stuff that they disagree with, right? But I didn't have a healthy woman role model, and I wanted to go that way in this topic, because I feel like a lot of women love to blame not having a father, or being abused a certain way, but nobody ever uh, put it on the guidance, the feminine, teaching the feminine, the mother aspect, because why is there mother wounds? And if you don't know what mother wounds are, I mean, if and you're into this type of stuff, you should look that up, you know. Um, and I should get into that, you know. Mother wounds will have you um, questioning your self worth, your confidence, going through what I went through, and we're just talking about not having a good role model. Um, you see them do bad, and you're like, I could help them. When I grow up, you're supposed to say, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a psychologist, whatever the case was. But you shouldn't be like, I want to fix my XYZ teeth. I want to make sure they're good. I want to buy them a house if I could. And you're grown up and you don't think about yourself, you know? That confidence, it's like they took it for themselves. And they know this. I used to think like maybe she's just oblivious. Maybe she just doesn't know, like, I'm hurting. But when I got better, my memory got better, and, the things that I had to go deep inner childhood, like wounding, like, the whole aspect of it brought back a lot of things that I didn't say. Like I said, I was forced into lying to CPS because my statement was so valuable. No, it was just so, well, it was so intricate and detailed that they couldn't believe that I was, that I was taking my word back. The reason why I did that was so, in my mother's eyes, my brothers could have a father, which she was never there. And I've said this before. But I bring this up again because that conversation in the car hurt me like no other. And her being my mother, I just assumed she knew. And maybe she had a plan to make me happy later. Um, which never happened, obviously. And, you know, I know she won't admit this, but sorry, I have a new shirt. I don't want to mess up. No. But, I know she won't admit this, but I can truly say now that from a young age, you know, she was very jealous of me. And I know because I saw the side eyes, like I was just trying to be a teenager, I didn't think my father figure was going to look at me. I didn't think her new boyfriend was going to look at me or try to touch me. So there's a lot that goes in with not having the right role model, but also seeing the effects that someone can do to you just by not doing anything. Again, for my case, I didn't say nothing until years later because I was so young. Until I saw reactions and being like, oh, it's that bad. uh, but it does teach you um, your friends, like what friends to have now. It does teach you your boundaries and everything, like from your friends, like I said, to your relationships. And if you want family in your life, and if you don't want family in your life, it's not a um, it's not a mandatory thing. And a lot of people might hate me for this, but to have blood around, you know They say blood is thicker than water, and that's true. In cases of what? That it's so thick that nobody knows your hurts? That is so thick that I'm supposed to just listen to you and bleed everywhere and I have nobody know that I need water? There's a lot that goes into mental health and family. And that's why I wanted to keep it on the female side, because it does run deep when you grow up thinking you have guidance and you don't have guidance that you thought you're being taught by a female role model, and you're really copying what you saw on TV, you know. Um, Again, in one of my other episodes with, I believe it's the parent wounds, you know, I started to show myself what a role model was. That's something that a lot of us did look up to our role models, you know, especially being a female with having menstruals and whatnot, was the blueprint. You know, you don't ask for much, but how do I become a woman? You know, that's a big deal. And for women, we need that, you know. And something that I've learned was having community. You know, if I had not leaned on the people around me that were positive, I wouldn't have known a lot of things about being a woman, you know, because every time I asked my mom, it was a lecture of why my dad left. I don't know. It would never be about me. It wouldn't be about the blueprint of being a woman. So that's why I say, you know, you make your own, whether it's wanting to be a little girly but yet comfortable. You know, that's what I took back. You know, I started, after my sickness, I started going slowly, doing my makeup again, because that's something I taught myself, you know, and doing my hair again, because when you go through mental health and you realize that the role models you thought was a role model, you know, it could be an aunt, it could be a mother, it could be a grandmother, it could be whoever, you know, just put that person in that place. Um, you know, it's actually a blessing that you can make your own blueprint, you know, that God gave you enough power to have discernment and intuition and know what's right for you, not what could have been. Because, you know, I always looked at other older women and I was always like, I can't wait till she teaches me how to do that, or I don't understand how this all works, but one day my mom will show me. The day never came, of course, but you know, it's trial and error. You start understanding, okay, that's not the person for me, right? So you start reading, you start looking up things, you start finding out, you know, your cycle of the month is, what um, a good best friend looks like, what a loving boyfriend looks like, what it feels like to be loved, you know. And you do this for the next generation, because in all that, you know, you don't want to be the gatekeeper of something so beautiful, of being the feminine for another feminine to learn. especially if they're at their adolescent stage. Wouldn't you have loved that someone gave you the blueprint then, if you had never got it? And if you did, and somebody that you know is going through that, send them this video. Share them that people are going through it, that they're not the only one. I know it's a hard thing to teach yourself the things that should have came along with you on this journey. But if we had not been through it, we probably wouldn't be thinking outside the box and helping the next generation of people to help the next generation of people, and not to be the generation and to actually be the we're here for each other conversations, you know? I would rather be in that. So I try to transmute things and take my power back, and, you know, just taking it moment to moment, you know, and really learning your inner child is how I learned, yeah, that person really wasn't there. Yeah, that happened. But am I going to put my face in the pillow, or am I going to get up and teach myself how to clean the pillow, how to, you know, navigate through this world of being a woman? Because your femininity, don't let them take that from you. That's the highest form of God in you that you need for yourself, that you need to guide yourself to make that blueprint. You know, you need that support within yourself to keep on going. I know it's always a tough topic with mental health. Just because they didn't have the guide or the blueprint for yourself, that's when you step up and you make it for generations to come. Make your power inevitable to see. Make sure you learn how to be compassionate if you haven't already given yourself that, because that's going to keep you going and definitely having hope, you know. If you taught yourself love, if you had to be that caretaker for yourself, I am with you, you know. I used to hate being called the late bloomer and things like that. But you know, people don't know the trials you have went through, the errors that you had to overcome to be at this place that you are at now. And I can speak for myself. And I empower you guys and myself to have that empowerment, to make that blueprint to start. You could be the best actress, you could be the best actor, you could be the best builder, you could be the best storyteller, whatever that means to you. Do it. Be your role model, because that's how you're going to navigate, be happy with your mental health. This is Out of Survival with Julia. And I am Julia. And I am proud to say that we have got this far and that we're not done. That this is just a stepping point. Conversations are just a stepping stone. That we're going to make it with these hands, with this mind, and with this soul. Make sure you check on one another, and you are that role model. Now shine. I love you guys.